Welcome to Transformative Principal, where you learn how to be a leader and not just a manager of a to-do list. I am your host, Jethro Jones. You can find me on Twitter at Jethro Jones. Your to-do list is a hungry monster that is never satisfied. For the last year and a half, I've helped principals get awards, get promoted, and find the time to do the work that really matters. I recently opened a new mastermind slot. Schedule a call with me and let's overcome the stressed and isolated principal position together. Go to the show notes for this episode at transformativeprincipal.org and click Schedule a Call with Jethro.
My name is Jennifer Kronk from the Assist Learning Podcast. I'm a proud member of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. The opinions expressed are those of the individual hosts. Make sure you check out all the other great podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com and get ready because the learning begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to Transformative Principal. I am so excited today to have Allyson Apsey on the podcast. This is a special episode. You can get the show notes for this and a link to Allyson's book at transformativeprincipal.org/episode 1050. So go ahead and check that out. And because this is a special episode, that's why the number's weird. Allyson, I don't really have 1,000 podcasts out there. So
I was really impressed for a minute.
Yeah, I just do that so that I keep track of special midweek releases, which is what this one's going to be. So Allyson, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for being on. It's an honor to be talking with you today.
This is so exciting. I'm thrilled. Thank you. And I feel very special being on a special edition of the Transformative Principal podcast.
Well, I think you are special, so it's fitting that you're on here. So thank you. Aww. So we are going to talk about your book, but first you and I have a mutual friend that I figured was a mutual friend, John Wenstrom, who's been on this podcast and on Transformative Leadership Summit, which is also happening this summer again. And I'm hoping if this interview goes well, that Allyson will join me for that as well.
Is this like a trial?
Yeah, it's a trial to see how it goes. So anyway, that's a good interview with John, and you can just go to transformativeprincipal.org and search for him. But then if you want to join the Transformative Leadership Summit, that is happening, and you can go to transformativeleadershipsummit.com and check that out. But tonight or today, whenever you're listening to this, we are here to talk about Allyson's book, which is releasing either tomorrow or today, depending on how quickly I edit this and get it out for you all to listen to. So, Allyson, your book is called The Path to Serendipity, and there's a subtitle there, but I'll let you say that because you probably know it better than I do.
So it's Discover the Gifts Along Life's Journey.
Excellent. And can you tell us a little bit about what you hope to accomplish with this book and why you wrote it?
Yeah, it's basically like my heart poured out on the pages of a book, literally. And that's a little nerve-wracking to send my heart out into the world.
Yeah, that's a little nerve-wracking.
I know. So The Path to Serendipity is just this, it's really a sweet little book. And it's filled with all this like stories, experiences, lessons, things that I need to reflect on in a daily basis in order to be like the best person I can be for everyone around me. And I thought, well, if, these are the stories that inspire me and move me, the things that I've learned, I'm going to start writing. And I started writing this book and I thought, if the only people who read this book are my sons, I have an 11-year-old son and a 16-year-old son. So I was thinking if their sons and their future families are the only audience for this book, then it's still worth it to continue writing. So I continued writing and editing and getting some feedback and really thinking through all of the things that I'd want to include in my manifesto, the book that just, absolutely shares my heart. And then it was crazy that Dave and Shelley Burgess wanted to publish it. It was such a thrilling honor, huge surprise, because I shared with Dave in a really non-traditional way, looking for his feedback. And all of a sudden they're like, wait, we want to publish it. Like, amazing. And then over the course of, the editing process and picking out the cover and all of the graphics inside the book. And there's these fun elements. It just turned into this beautiful, beautiful project, this beautiful book that I'm so proud of.
Yeah, that is awesome. Now, when you think about, somebody writing a story for their sons, there's two ways that is going to work. That's either going to be this heartwarming, touching, amazing story that you just fall in love with, or it's going to be a bunch of inside baseball that nobody gets, that your sons will love and everybody else will hate. I'm guessing since Dave Burgess wanted to publish it, it's the former and not the latter.
Yeah, I'm sure hoping so. I think, I wrote this. So the concept of the path to serendipity is really about embracing all of the experiences that we go through. So, we go through incredible challenges and we go through tremendous joys and the whole entire spectrum in between. And the path to serendipity is about stumbling upon the fortunes of all of those experiences. Like everything we go through there's beautiful lessons embedded in all of those experiences. And so it's about gleaning those lessons from everything you go through in your life.
So, it's really easy when you look back to see, people who have listened to this podcast for a while know that I'm very much into the one thing, and that has made a huge impact on my life recently. One of the things that they talk about that in a lot is the idea that when you look behind you, you can see how things were connected and formed this line. And when you look out in front of you, then in the future, it's really hard to see where you're going to go and where you're going to end up. And so part of the focus of that book is to be able to plan what that's going to look like going forward. But as you look back, one of the things that I like about your approach is that it sounds like even the bad things, even the tough things, are still things that you are grateful for. How did you get that mindset to where you can be happy with the tough things that you've gone through?
Well, part of embedded throughout the book is William Glasser's choice theory. And it's a psychology, a theory to explain behavior and our motivation for behavior. And I learned that early in my career as an educator and early in my marriage. And I think it probably saved me in both my professional career and that relationship, honestly.
Yeah. Tell me more about that.
So William Glasser has passed away, but I was able to spend some time with him years ago before he passed away. But he wrote many books. And one of the books that kind of explains the psychology of choice theory is called Choice Theory. And
that's a unique name.
It actually was originally called Control Theory because it's a major concept is that the only person whose behavior we can control is our own. And the only person who can control our behavior is ourselves. And Glasser talks about behavior being motivated by 5 basic needs. And they're not the basic needs you would think of like shelter and food and water. There's 4 psychological needs and then 1 physical need. So they're freedom, power, belonging, and fun. And then your physical need to survive. That everything we do in our lives is an effort to meet 1 or more of those 5 basic needs. And just for an example, and I talk about this in the book too, in my marriage, I have a big need for belonging and a really big need for power. My husband has a big need for freedom. I have a big need for survival. He has a low need for survival. So there's some conflicts in our relationship. And by understanding that his behavior is motivated by his desire to meet his needs, and he has different needs, different strengths of his needs than I do. My behavior, likewise, is motivated by my desire to meet my needs. I can better understand that, when he wants to go off golfing or fishing or snowmobiling or doing all of these activities that help his life be rich and need satisfying, I need that closeness of the relationship. So he might see me as, smothering him or really needy. Well, I have this high need for belonging. So he needs to make sure that I know I'm important to him. And I need to make sure that I know he needs those activities, those things that bring him joy in his life to live his best life. That information in a short period of time.
Yeah. When you bring in those ideas of making sure that you have that kind of awareness of yourself and of each other, that is a really important thing. And, as my wife and I, we've been married for 13 years. Is that right? Just had to make sure. 13 years. And that, like, we've gotten better at knowing each other over that time. And, and as I see my kids and see what their needs are, like, I have my oldest daughter, hers is totally physical touch, and that I think that's a love language and not the choice thing.
Sure.
But she needs that physical closeness with people. And that is like something that is so important. And my wife does not need that physical closeness. And so those two are always like, my daughter wants to like hold her hand and lay on her and all this stuff. And my wife just, she doesn't want that. And once we realized that's what it was, that she needs that, now we know like how to give that to her appropriately and comfortably, so that, it doesn't need to be something that's difficult. And in any kind of relationship, that kind of awareness is important. But how do you talk about that if you don't have the language to talk about it, Allyson?
Right. And the Path to Serendipity gives language to talk about it, to reflect on yourself and your relationships, just like the love languages. So it's similar thing, just different words, a little bit of different concept. But exactly what just happened in our conversation is exactly what I hope to happen with the Path to Serendipity. So it's full of stories, and many of the stories are from my own life, and there's some stories I make up to illustrate a point. But it's a very comfortable read, full of moving stories that, like people laugh and they cry when they read it. But really what I want everybody to do is reflect on their own lives. So just when I was sharing the story about, my husband's needs and my needs and the conflicts and the understanding we have to have, you're thinking about your own family. And that's what I hope for everybody as they read, throughout the Path to Serendipity, that they're not thinking about me and my stories. They're relating what I share to their own lives.
Yeah. And that is a really powerful approach to take. Now, is this book for school principals, or is this book for people in general? Who are you trying to communicate with this to?
I mean, I'm an educator. I've been a principal for, 15 years almost, and an educator for 20 years. So there is a lot of education that's embedded throughout, but even the things that are about classrooms or about school leadership, they can relate to really any profession. And there are stories in here about other kinds of relationships, like my marriage, that anybody can relate to. So I hope that, yes, absolutely, this book is for educators, all educators, teachers, principals, whoever. But I think it is a book that people who outside of the educational field will relate to, I hope.
Yeah. Well, I think if anybody has relationships with anybody, and you're talking a lot about relationships, you might be able to find people out there who have those relationships. So that'll maybe human interaction is important, and we all need to benefit from that. So one of the things that I've found really powerful in dealing with all kinds of people is the idea of having a framework to talk about different things. And so can you talk about what serendipity specifically means and why you try to get to it through some sort of path?
Yes. So the origin of the word serendipity is from a 16th century Persian tale. I think it's called The Three Princes of Serendip. And there's a whole lot to the story, but to sum it up in my Allyson version, it's these three princes who go out to live as commoners in order to impress their father. And as they move through life as commoners without all the luxuries they experience as princes, they realize that embedded in the hardships and the difficulties and the surprising joys and moments of awe that the commoners experience, there's beautiful things embedded in those experiences, and they make life worthwhile. That's where, I definitely play with the definition of serendipity, but my version is that every experience we go through, there's something beautiful to stumble upon, and we don't plan for it. So it is serendipitous so often. And there are so many serendipitous moments throughout every day that if we're looking for them, if we're looking for the beauty in the lessons and everything that we go through, even the things that kind of crush us to our core, if we can survive through that terrible, awful feeling and wake up in the morning and reflect on that experience, there are some beautiful lessons in them. The definition of serendipity.
Yeah, thank you. Can you share one of those stories where you've gone through something challenging and the beautiful things that you saw in it?
Yeah, so there is a chapter about losing my mom. And that was, I think, the most difficult thing that I've ever gone. I've gone through many challenges in my life. And I think those challenges are what led me to maybe this place of being able to reflect on life in the way I can. But one of the major challenges was we lost my mom 6 years ago. She went through a battle with cancer. And I speak more about it in the book. But I think just realizing the gift that love is and the gift that life is, and, that our ability to go through incredibly hard things, and that our bodies are these like miraculous instruments that can heal in some cases and recover in ways that we never even thought possible. Like all of those things are gifts that were embedded in that experience of, going through my mom's illness and ultimately her death. And I feel like I have a responsibility to be a better person because I lost my mom. I feel like she deserves that. And I think that's a gift that she left me.
Yeah, I do think that is a gift, and that mindset and that approach, it's so easy to get drugged down by difficult things that happen in our lives. And, I was just talking to a student today at school who was going through some challenging issues, and, her mom's going through some challenging issues. And I asked her what she thought of her mom. And she was like, man, my mom is so amazing. She doesn't let people get her down, and she pushes through hard things. And just, no judgment from my part, but the way she was talking about her mom 2 minutes before that, I did not think that's what was going to come out of her mouth. Wow. But she saw the value in her mom, even when she is not happy with how things are for her and her mom. And, that ability to see the positive, to engage in a positive perspective in our culture right now, it is so easy to have a negative outlook no matter what, because everything is bad, everything is bleak, and you got to work really hard to find people who are going to choose to be positive and see the good in the world.
It's so true. And then I'm thinking about, Jethro, that child that you just talked about, and if we could then apply that to classmates or colleagues or grumpy people we meet in the grocery store, understand that there's so much more to their story, that everybody has strengths, everybody has difficulties, everybody has areas where they need to improve, including ourselves. And if we could give each other that kind of grace, this world would be a really, really beautiful, much brighter place.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. So if you're listening to this right now, there's a link at transformativeprincipal.org/episode 1050. Please go there, get the book. It's going to be great. And Allyson, the last question I ask is, what is one thing a principal can do this week to be a transformative principal like you?
Be right where you are. The most important thing happening is the person right in front of you. That's it. That's all.
Well, I think that's pretty good. Allyson, thank you so much. People can contact you on Twitter at Allyson Apsey, ALLYSONAPSEY. And thank you so much for being part of Transformative Principal.
Thank you so much for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.